This is a disclaimer. This episode may contain graphic descriptions of crime and criminal activity. It therefore may not be suitable for listeners under the age of 18 or those who may find the descriptions disturbing. Listeners' discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to this episode of Krime KE podcast. My name is Ajuma, and I am very grateful that you found time to listen in today. Now, today's story is one of those stories that I remember where I was and what I was doing when I first heard of it. This is the story that probably radicalized me to the way women are perceived in Kenya. Like when this story broke, I remember I was a first-year student at Moi University, and just seeing the way people were making jokes and memes about the situation really broke my heart, because one thing I knew for sure was that no one deserved to die the way Ivy was murdered. So we will be talking about the brutal murder of Ivy Wangeci. And now, without further ado, let us get into today's episode. And please stick around until the end of this episode to find out how you can support this podcast. Now, before we begin this story, I want to give another disclaimer that my voice is not doing well, so if there are issues, I want to apologize in advance. Now let's get into the story. Now, to begin the story of the murder of Ivy Wangeci, let me take you to the morning of 9th April 2019. It is around 10:30 a.m. and Ivy Wangeci, who was a 6th-year medical student at Moi University in Eldoret, leaves her hostel for a class at the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. She meets up with a male classmate and they decide to go to class together because they're both going in the same direction at the school's mental health department. They walk side by side to class and they are having a normal, just morning conversation between classmates, that is. When they reach close to the medical conference center in the school, Ivy's classmate, whom for the purpose of the story we will refer to as David. Now, David sees someone coming towards them from behind. Again, just for clarification, David is not his real name. I'm just using that for this story to make it easier to understand. Now, at first, he saw from the corner of his eye that this person was coming towards them, and when he got close enough, he lifted something to strike Ivy. At this time, David tries to reach for the weapon in Ivy's attacker's hands, but by the time he makes the move, it is too late and she has already been hit at least once. At this time, David realizes that this guy has hit Ivy with a metal axe. David tries to stop him from hitting Ivy again, but the attacker turns to attack him too. So he decides to run away and save his life. He runs away heading towards the school's hostels. And at this point, he is so confused and disoriented by what he just witnessed that he falls down. And when he is on the ground, he looks back and sees Ivy down. He sees her attacker going around her, holding her hand. He tries to lift it up and he strikes her again on the head with the axe. Now, once he had done all that, he just casually walked away. But by this time, the commotion had already drawn attention of bystanders and boda riders who were around. People started shouting for help, and the attacker was literally swinging the axe at anyone who would get in his way. He even pulled out a knife and threatened those who were around to stay away from him. So now he had a knife in one hand and an axe in the other. The boda rider started throwing stones at him, and very soon he was overpowered by the crowd. Now, at this point, an ambulance is called to the scene, and Ivy, who has a cut on her head and her neck, is taken into the hospital for medical attention. A security guard at the university calls the police, who arrive just in time to save the attacker from the angry mob. The attacker was injured at this point, so police took him into custody, but he was rushed to hospital for medical attention. Ivy Wangeci is pronounced dead on arrival to the hospital, and her attacker is identified as one Naftali Kinuthia. Now, how did we get here? Let us go to the beginning. Ivy was born on April 10th, 1994. She was born in Thika as the firstborn in a family of 3 children. Her family lived close to Naphtali's family in Thika, so they at least knew of each other. When she turned 4 years old in 1998, she started schooling at Joyland Academy in Gatanga. That is when she became friends with Naphtali Kinudhiam. And I am using the term friends here loosely because at the time Ivy was in nursery and Naphtali was in class 2. So he was a few classes ahead of her. Now this friendship was good for the most part because according to Naphtali, he saw Ivy as his younger sister. He would do little things for her like saving her a seat next to him on the school bus or even just skipping queues to help her get food in school. Now at some point, Ivy transferred out of Joyland Academy, and despite the two not being in the same school, they still kept in touch. Which was not hard because remember they were neighbors at home. They stayed in touch even as she went to another school around Thika and Naphtali remained at Joyland Academy. Ivy passed her KCPE exams and she was called to Alliance Girls High School. And even through that whole time they were able to maintain a friendship. Naphtali said that they would often meet in Thika during the holidays, and both of them finished their high school education, and Ivy was called to study Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery at Moi University in Eldoret, and Naphtali was called to study Computer Technology at Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, which is JKUAT, which is in Juja. Now at this point, they actually still kept in touch. They would still meet at home in Thika and they were good friends. Now there is one thing that has been consistent in the relationship between Ivy and Naphtali. Most of Ivy's friends say that Naphtali always wanted a romantic relationship with Ivy, but no matter how much he tried, Ivy still saw him as a friend. Now, according to Ivy's friend, whom we are going to call Jen, again for the purpose of the story, Jen is not her real name. According to Jen, Naphtali and Ivy were friends and they had never been lovers as far as she knew. She said that Naphtali often showered Ivy with gifts with the hope that she would get into a relationship with him, but Ivy was very adamant that she was not interested in a relationship with Naphtali. She said that she met Naphtali through Ivy in 2017. At the time, Naphtali had graduated from JKUAT and he was running a computer repair shop in Nairobi CBD inside Jamia Mall. It was at this shop that they would meet Naphtali from time to time with Ivy. Now, on 10th April 2018, which was Ivy's 24th birthday, Ivy and her friends had planned to have her birthday party in Westlands in Nairobi. Now, if there was one thing about Ivy, it was that she took her birthdays very seriously. Most of the time, she would organize a very big party for her and her friends, and they would celebrate and all that. Now, on her 24th birthday, she had done just that. She organized a party in Westie, and she invited her friends, except Naphtali, of course. They needed a change of clothes, so they decided to pass by Naphtali's shop in CBD to change. Jen said that when she was having a conversation with Naphtali at the shop, she realized that he was upset at the fact that he had not been invited to the party. Now, she felt bad for him, and Jen gave Naphtali the location of the party and told him to pass by if he had time later. Naphtali actually made it to the party. He actually came and paid all the bills for the night. After that, they all headed to Bar Bistro in Westlands, where he paid all the bills for the night again. Now, the following morning, Jen said that Ivy told her that Naphtali invited her for a night at his house and she had declined. Now, this was not a new complaint to Jen because she said that Ivy often complained that Naphtali bothered her. She said that at some point, Ivy had blocked him and he would send Jen messages to give to Ivy. And the messages were mostly complaints about how Ivy was treating him. He complained about the gifts that he had given to Ivy, hoping for a relationship, but he got nothing in return. And at some point, he even told her that he had calculated all the amount of money he had spent on gifts to Ivy, and he came to a figure of 200,000 Kenyan shillings. Jan said that she would always try to comfort Naphtali when he complained, but she got concerned when the complaints turned into threats. Naphtali started demanding that Ivy pay her back all the 200,000 shillings that he had spent on her, and when Ivy promised that she would pay him back, he threatened to call her parents to demand payment directly from them. Now, Jen said that it alarmed her when Naphtali told her that only death could end what he was going through with Ivy. So by now you can see the dynamic of the relationship between Ivy and Naphtali and how the people close to them viewed their dynamic. Let's go to the investigation into her murder. Ivy's uncle identified Ivy as the victim of the attack on 10th April 2019 at Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, and immediately an autopsy was conducted. Now, trigger warning again, details of the autopsy may be too graphic for some listeners, so please proceed with caution. The pathologist found that she had an 18-centimeter shaped cut wound on the left side of her head and a second deep cut wound measuring 12 centimeters on her neck. The pathology report said that the main blood nerves on her neck were severed and she didn't have a chance of surviving the attack. Her head was basically opened and there was bleeding into both the left and the right sides of her brain. The autopsy report listed her cause of death as hypovolemic shock due to excessive bleeding from penetrating cut wounds on the left side of the neck. Penetrating cut wounds on the left side of the neck. Now, on the next day, on the 11th of April, blood samples from both Ivy and Naphtali were sent to the government chemist to help with the investigation. Messages were also retrieved from Naphtali's phone, which showed the interactions between Ivy and Naphtali and actually really painted a picture of the relationship between the two. Now, after he recovered from the injuries he got from the mob justice, Naphtali was officially charged with Ivy Wangeci's murder. The prosecution lined up more than 20 witnesses to testify in the case. That included Ivy's friends, the detectives who investigated the case, and even some of the witnesses who were at the crime scene. Now, I want to talk about testimony from one of Ivy's friends. This is not Jen, this is another friend. We're not going to give her a name. She'll just be Ivy's friend. Now, this friend told the court that Naphtali began aggressively pursuing Ivy in 2017. She said that their friendship circle knew about Naphtali because Ivy often talked about them, but they were not in a relationship. She said that they met him from time to time because they were all friends with Ivy. The friend said that for most of the time that she knew Naphtali, he was always trying to get into a relationship with Ivy, which actually matches up with what Jen said. She recalled that one time she was out in Limuru on a trip with Ivy, and when it got too late, Ivy suggested that they call Naphtali to ask if he could give them a place to sleep for the night, since he lived closer. And that is exactly what they did. And Naphtali was kind enough to offer them a place to sleep. Now, Ivy and her friend slept in Naphtali's bed that night, and he slept on his couch. The next morning, Naphtali actually dropped them back to Nairobi, which was kind of him. Now, this friend told the court that they had a group chat with her, Ivy, and Jan Inez, and they would often update each other about their lives in the group chat. And Ivy actually used the group chat to tell them her concerns about Naphtali and how he was threatening her. In December of 2018, Ivy had to change her phone number because she wanted to avoid Naphtali because he was just bothering her a little bit too much. Naphtali still found her other number and started reaching out to her, so she blocked him again. Now, things really started escalating in April 2019 when Naphtali showed up at Ivy's school in Eldoret unannounced. This is what happened. Ivy was coming from class and heading to the hostels on the evening of 3rd April 2019 when he saw him at the gate. She saw him at the gate. Of course, she was shocked to see him because he had no reason to be in Eldoret, let alone at her school. Ivy texted the group chat that she had met Naftali outside her school and she was worried. She said that she was coming from class and she saw Naftali outside the gate and he even asked her to get in his car. She said that she gave him an excuse that she was going to the hostel to drop her books and her robe, then she would be back. Her friends were actually worried about her and her safety, so they advised her not to leave the hostel that evening, and they told her if she really had to leave the hostel, she should walk in the company of a male friend. So Ivy chose to stay in the hostel and not go out. Of course, Naftali was blocked on her phone, so he wasn't able to directly reach her. So the next day, Naftali reached out to Jen and he started asking her to talk to Ivy so she could accept to talk to him. And despite several pleas from Naftali, Ivy made it clear that all she wanted was for him to leave Eldoret. So clearly, Ivy had a certain fear of Naftali, and literally, rightfully so. If he could drive all the way from Nairobi and show up at a school in Eldoret and announce when he knew that Ivy did not want to speak with him because he was blocked, then what else is he capable of? Now, in his defense, Naftali told the court that he had known Ivy since they were both kids because they lived next to each other and they went to school together. He said that they kept in touch for most of their lives and he appreciated Ivy's friendship. He said that they officially got into an intimate relationship in 2017. And by the time he was going to Eldoret unannounced, they were in a full-blown relationship, which is a completely different story from what her friends said. Now, Naftali said that at times, things were good in the relationship and other times they were bad. He said that day he went to visit her in Eldoret and she refused to see him. It was just one of those bad days in the relationship. He said that he knew her close friends and they would hang out. And actually, Naftali told the court that Ivy reached out to him and told him that she was planning a big birthday party for her 25th birthday, which was supposed to happen on the next day after she was murdered. He told the court that Ivy reached out to him to ask him to help her cover the expenses of her upcoming party, and he accepted. Now, Ivy had apparently planned a party on a budget of 28,000 Kenyan shillings. And Naftali said that he sent her 14,000 shillings and he promised to send the rest of the money before the 9th, which was the day before her birthday. Naftali told the court that when he traveled all the way from Nairobi to Eldoret on the 8th of April, his intention was not to murder Ivy but to give her the remaining cash that he had promised for her birthday. He said that he also wanted to wish her a happy birthday in person because he would be busy on Wednesday, which would be on 10th, which was Ivy's birthday and the day of the party. He said that he left Nairobi on Monday night because he knew he would be free on Tuesday. Okay? He left Nairobi on Monday night and got to Eldoret at around 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday. And this whole time, he couldn't reach Ivy because she had blocked him. When he got there, he decided to wait for her outside the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. He sat in the car for around an hour, and that's when he said that he needed to use a washroom. So he got out and tried to find a washroom around. So he said that on his way back to the car, that was when he bumped into Ivy. Now, according to Naftali, he said that at one point, he told her why he was, at that point, like when he met Ivy after bumping into her, he told her why he was in Eldoret, which was to wish her a happy birthday and give her the rest of the money. And Naftali said that that was the first time ever that Ivy told him that she was not interested in a relationship with him. He said that Ivy rejected the money and told him that her new boyfriend would handle the rest of the expenses of the party. But then that is Naftali's story, and he was sticking with it throughout the trial. Now, his main argument in his defense was that he did not mean to kill her, but he felt provoked by Ivy, and that is what led to him killing her. He said that after Ivy essentially broke his heart, he saw her hand in hand with a male friend, and that drove him to murder. His lawyers argued that he acted in the heat of passion, which is actually a valid defense in the Kenyan court of law. I will not go into that in this episode, but I will make sure to do a social media post on this. So follow the podcast on social media if you want to understand how provocation can be used and has been used as a defense in murder cases in Kenya. The case against Naftali Kinuthia took 4 years to end, which is when he was found guilty on the 26th of October 2023. The judge in the case dismissed provocation as his defense because the judge said that there wasn't enough evidence to show that Naftali was actually in a relationship with Ivy. The judge ruled that from the evidence presented, it was clear that Naftali pursued Ivy for a relationship, but she still saw him as a friend. The judge also pointed out a lot of inconsistencies in Naftali's story, so it was hard to believe that he was telling the truth in court. The judge called him and the defense out, telling them that they chose to use provocation as a defense as an afterthought because they had not even proven enough that Naftali and Ivy were actually in a romantic relationship. Another thing that actually did not help Naftali's case was the fact that he had carried an axe in the boot of his car all the way from Nairobi to Eldoret, and when he saw Ivy, he hit her not once but twice. Although he said that the reason why he had an axe in the boot of his car was because it was for protection, which I don't get, but that is his story and he is sticking to it. The judge said that those were the actions of someone who absolutely had the intention to commit murder because he hit her twice. Like, he did not even give her a chance to survive the first attack. So yeah, for all those reasons, he was found guilty of murder. And the prosecution in the case asked the judge to give him a death sentence. They say that Naftali never apologized to Ivy's family, and he took her life at a very young age. So the only right thing to do was to give him a death sentence in return. On December 4th of 2023, the judge sentenced Naftali to 40 years in prison. At this time, Naftali was 33 years old. I have an audio clip from Naftali in court when he is being questioned, and he talks about how he feels bad for Ivy's family and how much he regrets her death. Listen.
Once you learned that Ivy had died, you also have suffered injuries. What was your feeling?
This is an incident that I regretted forever. After thinking about it and reflecting, I knew it would not have happened. And there were many ways to get around this situation without causing the death of an innocent person. There were things we could have done differently.
As an individual, where you stand, socially, what has it done to you?
Since that day, I felt like I've done something. You know, that causing the death of a person is very unacceptable to the society. So I felt like I've been secluded from the society. And even when I'm in prison, when I was in prison, all this time I've been in prison, after a few years, I was told that my father was ailing from a lung disease. He passed away while I'm in prison. So the feeling of losing a loved one, it's hard, and I feel bad for the family, for the victim's family. If there was anything that could be done now, we could do it.
Ivy was buried at their home in Mahiga, Othaya in Nyeri County. He was eulogized as a hardworking girl, a bubbly person who really cared for those who were close to her. And I am genuinely happy that her family was able to witness her get justice in her murder, no matter how long the case has taken. May her soul rest in peace. We have come to the end of this episode, and that is all I have for We have come to the end of this episode, and that is all I have for you on the story of Ivy Wangeci. You can support Krime KE podcast by sharing this episode with your friends so that we can get a larger community to listen to these cases. If you'd like updates on crime cases that I have spoken about on the podcast, please follow the podcast on social media for that. I have linked our social media pages in the show notes of this episode, and I have also tagged the podcast's contact information in the show notes of this episode so that it is easier for you to reach out if you have any feedback on this episode or just the podcast in general. You can also use the same information to suggest crime cases that you would want to hear on the podcast, and I will surely get to them. Now, with all that said and done, don't forget to give this podcast a 5-star rating on the platform that you're listening in from, and catch the next episode of Krime KE podcast on Thursday next week. But until then, stay safe, and remember, it is crime with a K.